Welcome, everyone, to the Penny Stamps Distinguished Speaker Series. Today we are thrilled to present fashion icon and hometown girl from just up the road, Anna Sui. Yeah, we're very lucky she's agreed to do this. And I don't know if any of you were reading, she just had Fashion Week in New York was in September, middle of September, and the New York Times was, constantly reviewing Fashion Week, Fashion Week, Fashion Week. And there was a fabulous article in which the fashion aficionados lamented the fashion industry, how it's gotten so serious and so corporatized. But they said, today, as before, as now, the most fun is always to be had at an Anna Sui show. So, and I'm sure we'll have the most fun today too. I want to thank our partners for their support of today's program, the Institute for the Humanities and the Detroit Creative Corridor Center, or DC3, and Michigan Radio 91.7 FM. Just a couple quick announcements before we get started. Don't miss the opportunity. Anna Sui's designs are actually on exhibition right now at the Detroit Historical Museum. There's an exhibition called Fashion Defined. This is an exhibition that's going to be up throughout the year, so make your way there next time you're downtown. The Detroit Historical Museum is on Woodward, just adjacent to the DIA. So easy to find. Go check it out. We will be continuing with our series of special events outside of our normal Thursdays. Next Tuesday evening at 7 p.m., right here at the Michigan Theater, we will host famed poet Ann Carson and award-winning actress Juliette Binoche. Yeah, I'm glad you're excited. They will discuss their processes of translation and adaptation inherent in the current work, which UMS will be presenting. The next day will be the opening of that, the Antigone production starring Juliette Binoche. And this will be a two-part event because we are actually beginning before the conversation. We are going to have a staged reading with some local theatrical celebrities. And this will be the alternate translation of Antigone, which is Antigonique, also by Ann Carson. This will be starring such local celebs as Malcolm Tulip, Gillian Eaton, and our wit artist-in-residence, Joseph Keckler. So not to be missed, and of course you don't want to miss Juliette and Ann speaking together. So next Tuesday, 7 p.m., let your friends know. We will be having a Q&A with Anna today. We will not be having it in the screening room, however. We will host the Q&A right here, so you don't have to move. If you want to ask her a question when the time comes, we have a microphone up here at the end of this aisle, another microphone there, and you can line up and ask her questions. So now, to set the stage for today, our format will be, as you could probably tell, a conversation. And to lead this discussion, we have landed on just the right person. Her name is Paulina Petkosky. She is a Detroit-based women's wear fashion designer. She's a consultant and stylist. She studied at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, in addition to studying abroad at the Paolo Moda International Institute of Design in Florence. She's worked for top American designers such as Isaac Mizrahi, Diane von Furstenberg, Pamela Rowland, and Rachel Roy. She has since returned to her hometown of Detroit to work on the launch of her own new collection. Her designs are also currently on display at the Detroit Historical Museum right alongside Anna's. And in November, Paulina has been selected to be a part of the first Detroit Garment Group Fashion Incubator at Techtown in Midtown Detroit. And just to give you a little introduction to Anna, for anyone who's here who has no idea who she is, Anna Sui's collections take you on a journey that is unparalleled in the world of fashion. Mixing vintage styles with her current cultural obsessions, she effortlessly makes hip and exuberant original clothes. Whether Anna's inspiration is Victoria cowboys, Warhol superstars, or Finnish textiles, her depth of cultural knowledge is always apparent. Anna's constant search for new ideas and challenges keeps her ahead of her times. The boundless energy and creative ingenuity of her runway presentations always makes her shows the high point of New York Fashion Week. Her signature motifs and spirit have created a successful range of licensed products from fragrance, cosmetics, eyewear, and accessories, all embodied in the vision of the 50 Anna Sui boutiques around the world. The Anna Sui brand has been independently owned since its inception in 1981. And following her own inspiration, Anna Sui continues to inspire, and she will inspire you today. But just before she does that, and before we bring her out on stage, we're going to show a very short 5-minute video encapsulating her work and career, and then Paulina and Anna will join you on stage.
It's funny, my friends tell me since I was 4 years old, I was talking about being a fashion designer. And back then I probably had no idea what it even meant, except that I thought it was something pretty glamorous.
She's never changed. She's always inspiring, always different.
And to me, she's a kind of Janis Joplin of fashion.
You know, I think I have the best job in the world. When I'm creating my fashion, cosmetics, fragrances, I refer to kind of my universe. And I think that that's what always keeps that identity so strong. There's so many things that I love, and you see it over and over again in my work. The 60s, rock and roll music, street fashion, and very feminine styles. But I think it's always filtered through this crazy brain that I have, and it becomes Anna Sui. Every season, I'm in a panic because I have to come up with an inspiration. It's always so hard to figure out what it is that you want to do, but luckily this time at Christmas, I had a dream about a friend of mine from the punk days, and she always had the most incredible style, and what she did was she wore Victorian, beautiful blouses, things from the flea market, mixed with all the punk clothes. When people talk about Anna Sui fashion, I don't think they're really referring to an age group. They're talking about a spirit. I mean, my mom wears my clothes, my nieces wear my clothes. I think it's people that love beautiful fabrics, they love the latest trends, and I think that they also love prints, which I'm well known for.
I think girls love Anna Sui because it's so feminine and playful and young. There's nothing not to love. It's like a girl's dream.
You never know with Anna Sui, and that's the good thing.
To me, fragrance and cosmetics has always been an extension of fashion. I think it kind of completes the look. It's kind of like a final accessory to completing a look, because the fragrance gives you the mood, gives you an atmosphere that you can walk around with, and the cosmetics really polish off the look. Fragrance is like an unspoken language. It kind of tells so much about a person, tells so much about their mood, and tells so much about what it is they're trying to express without having to say a word. You know, the incredible thing about fragrance is that you can use it to suit your moods. There's very dramatic fragrances that are a little stronger and a little more memorable, and there's those light ones that kind of just whisper like an atmosphere about you. You know, we're working on a new fragrance, and we've touched on a lot of the things behind the world of Anna Sui. So I think that you have so many choices, and I think that's why Anna Sui has such a big spectrum of fragrance. People always ask me for advice or ask me what's that secret ticket of success, and I really feel that it's always different for everyone, and you really have to stay true to yourself. You have to do what you believe in, do what you do best, and stay true and stay focused.
pleasure to present the Jeffrey Bean Lifetime Achievement Award to Miss Anna Sweet.
I think the most incredible moment of my career was when I received that phone call from Diane von Furstenberg, and she told me I was receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award from the CFDA. It's something totally unexpected. It meant so much to me to be recognized by my peers and fellow designers. I think that there's no greater achievement for a designer.
She has done this all on her own. She has her own look, her own point of view, energy, youth, and I think it's fabulous to see her recognized tonight. It's a great night.
And she's such an amazing person, and I get a lot of inspiration from her.
Anna Sui's award is so long overdue. She is a genius. If I was a girl, I would be just Sui, 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 head to foot, because I love what she does.
Live your dream. What can we see from Anna coming in the near future? Wait and see.
Please welcome Anna Sui and Paulina Petkoski to the stage.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. It's an honor and a pleasure to speak with you tonight.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So live your dream. That's a very powerful statement. Can you tell me when was the first time that you realized you could live your dream or that you were living your dream?
Well, I think that from childhood on, I knew what I wanted to do, and I just focused on it. I learned to sew as soon as I could. I started making my own clothes. I did some research about design schools, and at the same time, I read an article in Life magazine about two young ladies that graduated from Parsons and ended up going to Paris, and Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor opened a boutique for them. So I thought, okay, that's the key. I have to go to Parsons and move to New York. Many years later, I went back and reread the article. I found it, it was in these piles of papers, and I didn't realize that these girls, one of them, their father was Irving Penn, like the legendary fashion photographer. But as a kid, you don't understand those things. You just think you have to find the magic key. And I think that from that point on, I was really living my dream.
Wow. So I want to back up. I want to talk about where you grew up. So you grew up in a suburb of Detroit. Do you remember what that was like back then? And have you been following what's happening in the city post-bankruptcy recently?
Yeah, I think, growing up in the suburbs, I was just really a product of pop culture. I lived for TV shows, rock and roll, and every once in a while you'd find a great magazine with a little picture and you'd dream about that. I'd stick it up on my wall and think about it and think about it and think about it. And I mean, it was such a much bigger world back then. You didn't have the immediacy that the internet gives you now. And I think that it made things much more precious, and you longed more for them. So that was a great way to grow up. And I was always trying to find, like, what's going on in fashion? Who's the new designer? I mean, I was just obsessed.
So you left Detroit and you headed to New York. Talk to me about what Parsons was like at that time. I mean, now Project Runway has really made Parsons, I know that their attendance has skyrocketed. So what was it back then? Where did you live? What was that like for you?
Yeah, going to Parsons was such an honor because they had a very small classroom. And in fact, I think graduating class was about 30 people, where now it's about 300. But back then, there were a lot of jobs to be had, too. And I think nowadays, jobs are sparser. You have to really become a global person. You have to be willing to travel and work in other countries. But I was lucky to be in the industry when I was, because it was the height of the fashion industry in the United States. There were great textile mills, incredible trim places, great embellishments, and you had it all within the area of the garment center. So I really grew up in the garment center.
And what was your first big break into the industry after Parsons?
Well, the way I got into the industry, I overheard two seniors at Parsons talking about a job opportunity, and I was still a junior, and I thought, oh, that's my favorite designer, Erica Elias. She did a line called Charlie's Girls, which was a very junior sportswear sort of company. So I took my portfolio from school and ran up to see her, and I got hired. So, and it was kind of like a dream job because I had my own design room, I had sewing ladies, I had a draper, and there were 5 divisions. So she said, just inspire me, do what you want. And I could do anything for any of the divisions. But she was a really tough boss. I mean, like she said, if you're talking, you're not working. And every morning she would arrive, there was like a buzzard like of the gate to enter the office, and she would buzz it like zzz, like just to announce that she was there. And I mean, she was tough, but I learned so much from her, and it kind of opened up doors for me throughout my career.
And so after that, I know that you had gone to a trade show and you had put in a few of your designs, and you were working somewhere else at that time.
Yeah, I had friends, this is during the punk rock time, I had friends that were making this incredible punk jewelry, and they were selling all the rock and roll stores across country and some glamorous boutiques, and I was just so enamored of them, and I thought, oh, that's what I want to do. So they said, well, why don't you share a booth with us? I guess they needed the money to share the booth, and I wanted to do some design, so I did a 5-piece collection. And from that show, I got orders from Macy's and Bloomingdale's, which were really promoting young fashion at that point. And consequently, I got a New York Times ad. Well, the owner of the company that I was working for called me into the office, and he said, how come you have your own New York Times ad? You work for me. This has to stop. And my answer was, I can't stop. I have to ship my orders. And I got fired. So that's how I started my business.
Wow. That's amazing. So the time period between that happening and your first runway show was about maybe 10 years?
10 years, yeah.
Talk to us about that 10 years, because I think that's a really important part for anyone who's really trying to make something for themselves before you even get to the runway.
Well, I have to say, I think that 10 years gave me the foundation to actually be where I am today, but it was tough. I had to do freelance jobs. I worked 7 years in Italy doing freelance collections. I did some collections in India. And practically every penny that I made went right back into the business, because as your business grows, you need more capital. And it was just a constant struggle. It was like kind of a really hardship, like going through that and worrying about money all the time. But about 10 years after I started that and started having my collections at a lot of the major department stores and boutiques, some of my friends said to me, oh, why don't you come to Paris with us? We're all going for the collections. So I'd never been to a Paris show before, so it was so exciting. The first show we went to, I was with my friend Steven Meisel, and we stopped at the Ritz and we picked up Madonna. Well, I walked into a room at the Ritz, and it was filled with racks and racks of clothes from every designer in Paris, shopping bags of shoes and bags. And I mean, it was like, you would be so jealous if you saw what she had, like sitting there. And she came out of her dressing room and she had her coat on. And by the time we got to the Gaultier show, she sat down and she leaned over and she opened up her coat and she said, Anna, I have a surprise for you. I'm wearing your dress. So that was one of the big things that gave me confidence that maybe I could do my own show.
Wow. And so then right after that, in 1992, you opened up your store.
Yeah. You know, I did my first show. I started getting recognition. A lot of stores would come and look at my collection, and they say, well, especially department stores, like, we don't know where to put you. You can't hang next to Bill Blass and Calvin Klein. Like, we don't know where to put you. So one of my friends actually that went to Parsons was the head designer at Calvin Klein. And he lived on the same block as I did. And he said to me, come over to my house for dinner. I have an idea for you. And I didn't know him that well, but he said, you know, I'm kind of psychic. I think you should open a store. And I was like, I don't have any money. How can I open a store? He said, no, 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 no. Believe me, if you open a store, they'll get you. You'll create your own world, and they'll get you. Next day, I went down to Soho, and I found the space, and it was reasonable because Soho wasn't really happening at that point, and consequently, I had my store there for 23 years. It became the showcase for all my world, the red floors, purple walls, black lacquer furniture, which was done out of necessity because everything was from the flea market, and I just painted it black so that it looked like it matched. But all those things, like the furniture that I chose, the things that I hung on the wall, the butterflies and the paper mache dolly heads that we made for decoration, Tiffany lamps, all became Anna Sui icons. So when I was approached by licenses, we had so many icons to draw upon, and I think that's been the success of all my licensed products.
Wow. So I want to talk about some of the people that are in your life, because you have a lot of special people. Now, you went to school with Steven Meisel.
I went to school with Steven Meisel. He was in illustration. I was in the design department. And at that point, the design department was very strict. You weren't allowed to mingle with the other students. But every day, I would sneak into this lunchroom so I could go hang out with Steven. And like all the kids would be like dancing, and they'd always be talking about parties. And it was like just a really fun period. And in fact, somebody said to me after reading that article, or reading the story about Irving Penn, they said, well, you found your own Irving Penn, because I think Steven's opened up a lot of doors for me.
Wow, yeah, I mean, he's an incredible photographer. And Marc Jacobs, how did you meet Marc?
Well, I knew Marc since he was working at a really great boutique, Charivari. And he was just a young fashionista kid that was obsessed with fashion, the way I was obsessed with fashion. And he became famous. He had his line at Sketchbook. But at the time when he was working at Perry Ellis, I think right after Perry Ellis, he started doing freelance work too. And that was at the same time that I was working in Italy. So the two of us worked in Italy together. And we worked for the same company, but he did the Iceberg division, and I did Cento per Cento, and then eventually they gave me my own collection, which was Sui by Anna Sui. And so every couple weeks we would be shuffling off to Cattolica in Italy, and we'd be working all day, but at night there was nothing to do, so we'd have dinners, and then he'd always like come and hang out in my room, so we got to be really close. It was just, we had each other just to support each other through that hard time.
That's incredible. And you have another amazing muse. Has she been in all of your runway shows? Or
I think Naomi has done more shows than any other model for me. Usually she either opened or closed. Sometimes it was a struggle because if Linda did the show, I'd have to open with Naomi and close with Linda. And then if suddenly there was a new model, like when Karen Elson showed up on the scene, Steven said, she's got to open the show. And it's like, but what about Naomi? And he's like, oh, well, okay, she can close it, but Karen's got to open the show. So it's always been kind of a struggle with Naomi, but always like such a privilege to have her, because nobody walks like Naomi.
Right. And then finally, you received the Jeffrey Bean Lifetime Achievement Award in 2009. Did you work for him for a brief moment?
Actually, when I was in school, I tried to get a part-time job, and I went up to a showroom, which was the Jeffrey Bean showroom, and I did showroom sketches. I think I only did it for a couple of months because I don't have much of a memory of it, except I still do have some pencils.
All right, so I want to talk about the business, and I want to talk more about the Anna Sui world. Describe this world, that you represents all of your creations.
Well, I think whenever somebody talks about Anna Sui fashion, there's always the same catchphrases. It's always nostalgic but trendy, a touch of rock and roll but very feminine. But there's always that opposite, like you can never tell if it's for a good girl or a bad girl. And I think that's part of the appeal.
And how do you balance being an artist with a commercial business?
Well, I think I have my parents to thank for that. My father was a structural engineer, so I got the business side from him. and my mother studied painting, so I got the artistic side from her. But you know, for many, many years, I didn't really pay so much attention to the business part, because as my business was growing, I just thought I could do anything I wanted. But I think in 2008, it was kind of a reality check for a lot of people, and things changed a lot at that moment. So now we really have to do a lot of analyzing, a lot of planning, a lot of strategy, because the business is just changing so quickly.
Yeah, I think that's true across a lot of different people. It's students, you know, social media. The world's just moving a lot faster.
It sure is.
So you actually started launching fragrances in the late 90s. You were ahead of the curve because now everybody has fragrances. How did that come about, and was that a strategy that you planned? And also, how many do you have now?
It wasn't something that I planned. In fact, none of my business was ever anything I planned. I just was able to react when something happened. But around the time that we started doing fashion shows, New York became a center for international press, and it attracted a lot of international buyers, especially the Japanese. And they were very, very interested in finding New York designers to distribute in Japan. So I was approached by many companies, but actually the one that I signed with was Isetan, which is one of the biggest department stores in Japan. And along with signing with them, I got licenses like My Cosmetics, and we do handbags, stockings, eyewear, towels, even kimonos. So it made me very, very famous, first in Japan and then throughout Asia, because at that point, everyone was coming to Japan from Asia to look for fashion.
And talk about what makes a successful licensing partnership, because they can go really good and they can go really bad. And I think that's major success for you.
I think that what I loved about the cosmetic company Albion, that when they approached me, they said to me, we don't want to make a beauty product. There's too many beauty products out there. We want to make an accessory product. And they love the idea of the black lacquer packaging with carved roses and all the purple and black and red. And, you know, like, they really got my world and they really draw from it. And I think to this day, you can see it in everything. Because to me, like, not everybody can afford an Anna Sui dress, or it doesn't really fit in their lifestyle. But they could get the same excitement, the same thrill, and the same fantasy in that tube of lipstick or that nail polish.
Right, and so with all these global markets, you're in the Middle East, you're in Europe, and you're in Asia. How do those differ? I mean, do you find that different countries require a different setup, or customers tend to go for one product over the other?
Well, for fashion-wise, I think that we really offer the product that we show on the runway. But for the licensed products like fragrance, there are differences. In fact, when we started out doing perfume, we always had to think about the Japanese market, because they don't like a heavy scent. They like something very fresh and light. But actually, that was the trend at that point. So my fragrances became successful. Now that things are even moving faster and more global, suddenly they've become more sophisticated in their fragrances, and they're looking for something a little more dramatic. At the same time, we're opening up markets like in India and the Middle East, who like very dramatic fragrances. So we're starting to offer those to everyone. So actually, with the portfolio that we have, we're able to hit all the different markets.
That's cool. So you've also done a lot of different collaborations. This is for O'Neill. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I love doing collaborations, because when you have your own company and it's small, you're very limited as far as what you can actually produce. You have to know how to get it made. And there's a lot of things that just don't happen anymore in the garment center. I was thrilled with O'Neill because they're known for surf wear, they're very California, so it was a nice challenge to kind of capture that audience, and the clothing is much more affordable. So again, I think they really, really understood the DNA of my product and really captured it in the product that they made.
Yeah, and you've also worked with Hush Puppies.
Oh yeah, Hush Puppies is a Michigan company, and Actually, I had a huge success with them in the early 90s. I think it was about my 4th season of doing shows. I was doing a preppy collection, and I wanted matching Hush Puppy shoes to the pastels on Liberty prints that I was doing. So those shoes became so famous that they're in a book called The Tipping Point, where they explain like what kind of phenomena changes things. And they cited out those shoes as like that was the beginning of kind of like independent fashion and downtown look. And so I was very lucky with them the first time around. So many years later, I think probably like 5 years ago, I called them again and said, I would love to do a collaboration with you. And they were very open for it. And I've done about 4 different collaborations with them. In fact, in this last collection, they did some fantastic shoes.
Wow, do you have any upcoming?
Yes, we're going to do for the next collection too.
Great. So I want to ask you about some of your favorite things and your inspirations. Have you gone to any exhibitions recently in the past year that you've found inspiring?
Yeah, in fact, I think I have the best job in the world because I can use anything I'm obsessed with in my work. So if there's an exhibition that I want to see, I usually try to set the time out to do it. So this summer I went to Antwerp to see the Dries Van Noten exhibit, and then the next day to Paris to see the Yves Saint Laurent. They were showing the 1971 collection, which was the revolutionary collection that he did that was kind of a scandal at that moment because it was 40s fashion, and a lot of people were really upset because that was too close to the time of World War II, and a lot of people had very bad memories of it. But to us, I think we were thinking, wow, this is such an exciting way to dress. It's so glamorous. It's like movie stars. But now I think it's really become his most famous collection. And I've also seen the exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum of China. And Andrew Bolton did such an amazing job. Like, he really, really transports you to China, but in a very glamorous way with couture fashion and mixing with some authentic robes from the emperors and even some clothing from movies.
I was fortunate to catch that show. It was gorgeous.
Breathtaking, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the presentation was amazing too.
Oh
like
yeah, that gold dress. So speaking of glamorous, who are your current muses, either movie stars or models right now that are really inspiring to you?
You know, every time people ask me who is like my ultimate muse, I have to say it's Anita Pallenberg. She was Keith Richards' girlfriend. And I think she really set the standard, like for rock fashion, rock style. And to this day, everyone's still copying her, like Kate Moss has her look. And then I'm really fortunate to have Gigi Hadid in my shows. And I think she kind of represents like new glamour. And not only is she beautiful and clothes look incredible on her, she's one of the nicest models that I've ever worked with. Really, really polite and really, really considerate and really nice.
That's good to hear. And what are some of your favorite vintage flea markets, either in New York or all over the world? What are your inspiration spots?
Well, New York used to have the most amazing flea markets. In fact, there was 4 big corners that was just all flea market. And consequently, through the economy, as things improved, they got built over by big luxury apartment buildings. So we only have a tiny little one now, and it's kind of sad. But I like traveling, so whenever I'm going to a new city, a new country, I always research what flea markets do they have. So not only do I like Portobello Road in London, but I also like, I went to Jakarta, and I went to the most incredible kind of little street filled with antiques. And in fact, I liked it so much I went back a second time just to go there again.
Wow. All right, so let's talk about your inspirations and the design process. What do you love most about the design process?
I think the thing that I love the most is the research. it's kind of like my continuing education. If I love to learn about something new and then really find out what influenced it, how did it happen, and it's like the ultimate to find out that it's the same kind of inspiration that they had that caused it to happen. I'm not explaining myself right, but okay, I always go back to loving like Art Nouveau style and painters and furniture. And I think that the first big resurgence of Art Nouveau came in the 60s. And I've asked so many people from that period, like, how did that happen? And they said, that was the stuff that you could find in flea markets. Like, everywhere you went, they had that stuff because it was not in fashion. Everyone loved modern, like Scandinavian style, Italian style. Nobody was into these Art Nouveau pieces, so people started buying them for nothing at flea markets and decorating their homes that way. So I think that that's such an interesting thing that, like, things never change. People always are inspired by something that's around them and out of necessity.
Right. So this is what your inspiration board looks like. Is this the first part of a season for you?
Yeah, that's how I get going on the collection, because I might have a concept in my mind, but I have a staff that has to get that concept too, plus all my licenses. So I sort of build the collection on these boards. They're actually the walls of my office. And I'll start out by thinking about color and thinking about the theme. So this board was inspired by my trip that our family took to Tahiti. But I had to finish all the fabrics and all the colors and all the ideas before I went to Tahiti. So it's really my fantasy of Tahiti. But it was fun to do the research. It was fun to kind of research that along with my trip. But I also am a product of pop culture. So to me, Tahiti is all those Dorothy Lamour movies. Like in the 40s, like it was such a big thing, like that whole South Seas influence. And so I watched, I think, 14 of them. Although she did 48, I think, of the Sarong movies. And then I also researched nightclubs, because at that point, all the movie stars were going to clubs like the Macambo and the Coconut Grove. And I thought that was so glamorous that they had these places to go where they'd get all dressed up. And the Coconut Grove especially intrigued me because they had life-size coconut trees. And in fact, one of the pictures that I saw, there was a fashion show that they had inside this Coconut Grove. And that's what gave me my idea for my runway.
Wow. So how big is your design team?
It's not as big as most people think. I have one main design assistant, one person that works on fabric, one person that works on embroidery, and one person that works on T-shirts and also works with me on licensed products. So that's
Powerful,
really it.
Small but powerful. And so you start sketching after the mood boards.
I do. I do the inspiration boards, and then actually it's the fabrics that come next, because I can't see clothes without seeing the fabric. Like, if I look at a fabric and I can picture clothes, then I know it's going to work. There's so many times you come across a beautiful piece of fabric, and it's like, but what would I make in it? Like, you don't even want to cut it. It's so beautiful. So fabric's really important. So after those inspiration pictures, the fabrics go up on the board, and the prints that we develop. And from that point on, like when we're about 6 weeks away from the show, I know I have to start sketching. And because we have to start making clothes a month before the show. And people don't understand that you're making clothes up until right before the show. That's really how it happens. It's not something that's done months before.
Right, so what's happening here? Is this a layout of one of your prints?
Actually, I went to see the backdrop of the show.
Oh.
We worked with Oliphant Studios for many years, and she painted this. And she used to be just a few blocks away from me in Manhattan, but she moved out to Brooklyn. So we did a morning trip out to Brooklyn, and just to look at the colors. And sometimes we tweak it or add glitter or something to make it sparkle. But this time I thought she just did such a beautiful job. We just left it as is.
That's great. And then so you have to start casting models. Once the clothes are coming in, you're starting to work on the show. What's the show prep like?
So 3 weeks before the show, there's some clothes, but you have to start trying it on to figure out what else you need to make, like one idea leads to the next. So usually I get one model to come in and spend a couple hours with me, and we just try everything on. And sometimes I'll have friends with me. Stephen used to come, my friend Bill Mullen comes, and we just sit there and talk, and that'll start sparking some additional ideas. And then 2 weeks before the show, maybe I'll have a couple of models come in, try on clothes. But then the week before the show is when we actually have to assign an outfit to a model. And so we do what's called fittings, and we have it all scheduled in 3 days. And there's, I think, like almost 10 models a day that come in and try on clothes, and you figure out what they're going to wear in the show. And again, we build it all that way and put it on a bulletin board with Polaroids so that it's almost like having baseball cards. You can like look at it and see how things match up, what should go next to each other. And I take all the Polaroids myself. And it's so funny, one of the models said to me, "You're so old school, you take the pictures yourself." And I said, "Well, what do other designers do?" And she said, "Oh, they hire teams to do it now. They have like a whole backdrop, and they have the model stand in front of a plain white backdrop, and they have a hired photographer that does it." But I don't know, it's like so personal for me to like really see how the clothes look and to build the collection that I don't know if I could ever let that part go. And then she said to me, "Oh, Marc Jacobs is the only other one that does it."
I love that. So then details happen, right? So what are these pieces? This is jewelry?
Yeah, this is jewelry. I work with Karen Erickson of Erickson Beeman. She's another native Detroiter. And we've worked together since my first show, and she's a dream to work with because she really goes there with me. So I show her my inspiration boards. She comes up to see them. She cuts swatches, and then I start talking to her about shells and hibiscus. And actually, on the way back from Tahiti, we stopped in Hawaii, and I found a store that made latex flowers, but they looked so real. So we used a lot of those latex flowers this time for the jewelry.
Wow. And these shoes.
So for many years, I had a license of shoes from Italy and just had the most beautiful shoes ever. But that didn't continue, but they'll still make a few pairs for me for the show. So I researched 40s bark cloth because, again, that reminded me of the Dorothy Lamour movies, the 40s, and found some patterns of fabric that matched my collection, and they made shoes for me out of that. But then I also had the luxury to work with Hush Puppies, and they made some of the most incredible shoes. So I'll point them out to you as we're showing the fashion show.
And then it's also about hair and makeup. That's a huge part of the runway show. When do you start thinking about the hair and makeup?
Usually Pat McGrath comes like maybe 5 days before the show, and so we have the model try on the clothes, and I start talking about my inspirations. And actually, this young lady's from Michigan too. It's such a coincidence. So I wanted them to look like Dorothy Lamour. So we did the long lashes, the dark red lipstick, and that's my friend Bill Mullen next to me in the next picture coming up. And he's a men's stylist, and he works with John Varvatos, who is another Detroiter. And he loves to come up and just kind of hang out while I'm doing looks and sometimes for the fittings, too.
That's awesome. And who's this?
This is James Coviello, and he is such a genius. He's made hats for me since my first show, and he does sweaters. He does all my knitwear. And we've collaborated on many things, like a lot of the props for the show he'll do, because he can make anything. So this time I wanted these iridescent, dreamy palm trees. And I started describing them to him, and he said, "Oh, I can do that." So we found this fabric that was all iridescent, and then he like kind of disappeared for a few days and came back to me with this beautiful palm frond and said, "Look this is gonna look great." And so we didn't really know because they weren't assembled till the day of the show. And like just before I left to go to the show, he sent me a Instagram picture, and he said, "Look at this, isn't it?" Not Instagram, a iPhone picture, and said, "Isn't this great?" And it was so beautiful, and just the way the lights caught it was so beautiful, and also with the air conditioning in the venue, they were like they were blowing in the wind. It was breathtaking.
Wow. And on the topic of Instagram, how has social media changed the way that the fashion world works for you? Now everything is ready to go online.
I mean, it's great, but it makes things not so special. I was from that period of longing and dreaming about things, but now it's like it's so instantaneous. You just see it right away, and it's done with almost. But also, it's kind of fun because I can't wait to see the next collection. So this week was the Paris fashion shows, and they have live fashion shows now that you can see it. You don't have to wait till the next day to read women's wear or till 3 months later to see it in a magazine. So, I mean, it's got its good points and bad points.
Right. So these are some backstage shots from the runway. Do you have a lot of people backstage shooting?
It's kind of a circus back there. We've calmed it down a little bit because it used to be all the models would bring their boyfriends and they would bring their friends, and it would be kind of almost a party going on backstage and really distracting. So many photographers back there, video crews. So we've kind of calmed it down a little bit because it was kind of getting too hard to get the girls lined up and dressed and everything properly styled. So these young ladies are just about to go out. This is first looks. So that's the easiest look to do. The first one, because you have all the time in the world to dress them, and you can make any adjustments that you need. But if they have a second outfit, they're back to you in 4 minutes, and you have to just make sure that they're all perfect again to go out. And this time we had a lot of models that did 3 looks.
Oh, wow. And do you have a lot of dressers backstage, or are you the one doing all the final touches before they hit the runway?
We have a team of dressers, and we work with that company probably since the beginning. And so each model has her own dresser, but they all have to pass by me and Garen, who does the hair, because Garen just has that touch to put the hat on the right way and to adjust the collar the right way. And so he and I are pulling and tugging before the girls go out.
And so some of the prints that you worked on this season was with somebody very special who actually did this same lecture series.
Yeah, I was thrilled because I become friendly with Zandra Rhodes, and she's one of my idols from the very beginning. And every time I go to London, I try to stop at her museum. And actually, that's how I met her. I met her in the lobby of her museum, and we started talking, and then she invited me up to her studio where she lives and works, and everything is there. It's Zandra World up there. But I had this idea. Well, actually, a friend of mine said to me, "Why don't you ever ask Zandra to do a print for you?" And I thought, you think she would? And so I called her, and she had actually been to Tahiti before, and she had a whole sketchbook. So she sent me drawings from her sketchbook, and we picked out elements like seashells and hibiscus and waves and feathers, and she did this incredible print for me, and Gigi's wearing it. And then this blue caftan is also her print. That was the other colorway.
All right, so
and here's Gigi in the dress.
Yeah, so we're gonna cut to some footage of the runway, and we're gonna have Anna walk us through some of these elements from spring 2000.
So this is my favorite dress from the collection. Actually, Sofia Coppola just borrowed it for a party, and she said her husband told her she looked beautiful in it, so she wants to wear it again. This dress has seashell embellishments on it, and it was a reminder of clothing that my mom had, that we have relatives sending us things at Christmas time, and she had this beautiful dress with seashell embroidery on it. Here you can see she had on the patterned shoes of the bark cloth, and James Covella worked with me on the knitwear. Here she has on a Hawaiian shirt with a romper and shell beads. That was Karen Erickson's jewelry. This model is from China, and I was obsessed with him, and somebody actually tracked him down and flew him in for me. So I was lucky with that. And this is Lu Wen, who is like one of the top Chinese models, and just anything you put on her is just so magical. And that's kind of like a prom dress with a kind of a bomber jacket over it. And this is my favorite outfit from the show. This one I actually did for myself. So there's always that element where there's got to be something for me in it too. And this was Steven Meisel's favorite dress. Every time I showed this dress to him, he's like, oh, I love that dress. It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys know who she is, Miss Crabtree from the Little Rascals. And this dress was one that I had the hardest time making work because it was so see-through. And it's actually 2 layers, 2 different dresses. But Julia is so pale that it didn't matter, like nothing really showed through. And these are my hula shorts. I got this idea from seeing the Tahitian grass skirts, and I thought, oh, why not over a pair, sewn onto a pair of shorts? And then this is another mixture of that Victorian with the exotic, which I was inspired by that movie, The Piano, and I loved how Victorian it was, but then there were all these beautiful Maori natives around them. This print has octopus and starfish on it, but actually you can't see the octopus. It's under her arm on the sweater. And here's another sheer dress, but I've put it over a pair of surf shorts to kind of solve that see-through problem. And then surf shorts made glamorous with a Victorian top with it. And here's a souvenir jacket, and in fact, embroidered on the back is Sugar Puss O'Shea, and she's a character in a Gary Cooper movie who was a glamorous nightclub performer. And the model's carrying a ukulele, and when we went to Tahiti, everyone played ukulele. They were on the street corners, my cousins played them, and then my nieces and nephews learned how to play them, so I had to put that in. This is the daughter of a legendary model, Pat Cleveland, and her name's Anna Cleveland. And she's just kind of the it model right now for runway. And this butterfly lace somebody made for me, and I thought I would make a glamorous football jersey out of it. And here's the Zandra Rhodes print. And Bhumika is one of the breakthrough models from India. Really, really stunning. And then I think this is one of the favorite dresses of everyone on my staff. And it's all patchwork with different prints. And then we added like a beading embellishment. And I love this one with the fringe.
Oh, that fringe is gorgeous.
I think the fringe is kind of like a trend this season. Everyone seemed to do fringe, but I did it in my hippie way. And I wanted to get a grass skirt in here. So I thought, why not layer a grass skirt over a sarong with a Chanel jacket? So that's the outfit. And the lei necklaces are with those latex flowers that I found in Hawaii and Karen made into jewelry. And here's a couple. They're kind of like Nouvelle hippies.
So do you have men's as well, or are they just accessories for the runway show?
We produce some. We have it in my boutique, and there's a boutique in Korea that buys it. And like a lot of times, I get phone calls from celebrities, and they want to borrow something or wear it. In fact, the first person that ever did that was Mick Jagger.
Wow.
Yeah. And the coconut drink, we actually had these coconut drinks in Tahiti. And so I looked on Google and found artificial food and found this coconut cocktail. So I had to have the model carry it down the runway. And here's another Sugar Puss O'Shea jacket. This is Hanny Gabby, who I think even not on the runway has the most incredible style. Like you see her all the time in on the street pictures, and she always dresses so great. And this is Carolyn Trentini, who actually, we looked at each other during the fitting, and I've known her since she was 16, and now maybe it's 11 years later, and she's just had a baby. and we were just thinking like, oh my God, we've known each other so long.
Wow.
And there's Gigi, like the it girl of the moment. And this is the Sugar O'Shea outfit. So I had to make one, and the only person that could wear it is Jamie.
It's beautiful.
And the music that I used in the background, we saw some dance troupes when we were in Tahiti, and my favorite were from the, blanking on the name, one of the other islands. And I just loved the sound of their music, so we used that. And then this is the music from the movie where Sugar Puss O'Shea is in, and it's Ball of Fire. And this is her singing. And the outfit that she was wearing was like what Jamie was wearing at the end.
Wow. Such a gorgeous collection.
Thank you. So that's the fun thing about doing a collection. Yes, you have to make clothes that are going to sell for you, but you can also have fun with it. There's like some inside jokes, inside stories, and then as you're doing it, other ideas come to you, so they get thrown in. So it's very personal, and people don't usually hear the whole story, but when you look at it, when I look at it, I see all those little things.
How do you keep up with the pace? Have you always done the in-between seasons? It seems just things are going faster and faster. How do you still pay attention to the little details?
Well, I think that's my obsession. But yeah, it's harder and harder because you do have to be creative on schedule, and that's the hardest thing. So actually, before I came here, I just finished my new inspiration boards for the next collection. So, because this is the shorter season, so you have to get all the fabrics in work so that you get them before Christmas.
And what do you do right after the show is done? What goes through your mind? Do you have a ritual?
Well, actually this time, right, the day after the show, we had a party because I opened a new store.
Congratulations.
And so that was really fun. And then actually that Monday after, I started thinking about the next collection.
It just never stops. So I just want to ask you a few more questions, and then we're going to be able to open it up to the audience, so you guys can start thinking about what you'd like to ask. So what do you think some of the biggest shifts are in fashion, and where do you think fashion's heading right now?
Well, I think the biggest phenomena that happened in our lifetime is how casual fashion got. I remember when I first started traveling to the West Coast and thinking like, oh my God, they're so casual here. Like that's when I met Sofia Coppola, and she would always like put together these dinner parties. We'd meet at a restaurant, and I'd get all dressed up to go to a restaurant, and they would show up in flip-flops and shorts, and I thought we were going out for dinner. But that was the California style. But now when you look around, I mean, it's just kind of penetrated everywhere. Even when you go to Europe, people are so casual in tracksuits and leisure wear. And in fact, there used to be a time when you got on an airplane and everybody was dressed up in suits and ties. But now it's just so casual.
Right. And are there any upcoming designers that you keep your eye on? Are you looking at other designers? What's going on?
Well, I think my favorite right now is Simone Rocha. She's designing out of London, and it's so feminine and so pretty, and she just has her own signature. Because I think that's what's missing in a lot of these young designers. You don't recognize the clothes unless you see the name. But with Simone, I mean, it's got her look head to toe, and she really, really does it so well.
Yeah, and you're still based in New York, and I know that the garment district has been going through a lot of changes. What are you seeing happening in the garment district right now, and what have you been doing to preserve what's there?
Well, that's the really sad thing, that we used to be from 34th Street to 42nd Street, from 5th Avenue to 9th Avenue. It was a solid block of resources: fabrics, trims, zippers, sewing machines, racks. It's kind of shrunken down to 3 blocks now, and a lot of the real estate is being sold off for hotels, for tourists that are coming to the Times Square area. So, I mean, it's cleaned up New York a lot. It's a much nicer neighborhood now, but all those factories are disappearing, And so I joined a group of people that are trying to preserve the garment center. I mean, it's a tough fight because I think the realtors have already done the deal. But as long as we can, we want to keep the contractors there, our design studios there, and our showrooms there.
And do you do your production in New York as well?
I try to do as much as we can do. There's limitations now, but I'd say 85% of the clothing is made in New York.
Wow.
The sweaters are made in China because the US doesn't have sweater mills anymore. All the embroidery is done in India because we don't have handwork here anymore.
Right, yeah, everything's changed so dramatically. There's people in Detroit who are working on starting a Detroit garment district.
That's so great.
So maybe if New York gets squeezed out, we're not too far away. We can use some more designers here.
Okay.
Let everybody know. And how do you push through being a creator and sometimes being your own worst enemy? I know creative people always tend to be the most critical of themselves.
Yeah, I think I'm probably the hardest on myself because you're only as good as your last collection. It doesn't matter what you achieved the season before. Everyone forgets, and you have to reinvent it again. And that's the hard thing. And each time you have to try to outdo what you did the last time or do it in a different way. But that's also the fun thing because that's the challenge. I think that's what keeps me going is I love that challenge.
All right, well, I want to thank you so much. I'm going to open this up to questions from the audience.
Oh.
Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for the great questions.
Thank you. All right, if you want to line up at either one of the microphones on either side, we're ready for the Q&A. Say your name.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I used to live in Brussels.
Can you guys have it quiet in here, please?
It really fostered a love of Art Nouveau for me, and I think that's my favorite aspect of your collections. Are there any global Art Nouveau hotspots that you recommend?
Oh yeah. There's a great book that was done at the V&A, and it was Art Nouveau, and it's global Art Nouveau, and it's about when the first time around, all the initial artists. And so every time I travel, I look in that book and see if it's going to be a city that I'm going to. And in fact, I've gone to Brussels to see the Horta houses, and to Austria, and France has the most beautiful Art Nouveau, and England has a lot too. And in fact, even the United States has pockets, and some of the buildings are still around. So I mean, Tiffany is American, and I love going to see exhibitions about Tiffany. And I think in Chicago there's a great exhibition going on right now of jewelry and artifacts. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
And one over here. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Marin. Thanks so much for coming.
Hi, thank you.
I wanted to ask about a little earlier in your career. You mentioned that there were some periods where there was a lot of financial difficulty for you, and it was not, you weren't as certain as you are now in your incredible success. You've come so far. What were the things that kept you motivated during those periods where it was a little bit more difficult?
I mean, I'm kind of crazy this way. If I look at a piece of fabric and I can see clothing, I want to make those clothes. I want beautiful clothes. But I think I've always been driven the same way that, I need to make another collection and I have to come up with a new idea. And in order to do that collection, I had to have the money to support it. So I didn't mind doing design jobs because actually, I think especially the job in Italy kind of opened my mind up to becoming global because I didn't speak the language, and I was working with people that didn't speak English, but somehow we communicated and we made beautiful collections together. So I also learned about so many new resources that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll have one from this side.
Hi, I'm Elliot, and I studied illustration at Parsons for 2 years as well, and I caught the fashion bug. So I was wondering how you reconciled sort of those two interests and were able to like let each of them feed into each other, or like how that fuels your work in the fashion industry.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. What two things together?
Sorry, let me rephrase a little bit. I guess I'm just wondering, in the industry, it's such a cutthroat area to work within, and finding inspiration it's easy to run out of ideas very quickly. So I'm wondering, like, where do you get your main inspiration? Is it from the people directly around you, or?
No, it comes from a lot, everything in life almost. In my travels, I could be watching Turner Movie Classics, as we were talking about, and see a movie, and all of a sudden it sparks a collection. It could be a book. It could be a conversation. Like the whole nightclub thing was a conversation between Stephen and I about how we were lamenting that nobody dressed up anymore when you went out. And then he started sending me pictures of 40s nightclubs with people all dressed up, and it kind of sparked a whole thing like, oh, like I can use this in the show. So I think that it's training and it's discipline and focus really that keeps it going, but also that's kind of what keeps me going. That's what I love. And I love learning new things. I love discovering.
Okay, thank you. And one over here.
Hi, my name's Muna, and I want to ask that to what extent do you think the knowledge of chemistry, biology, and fiber science matters in fashion design? And also, how different could it be for you to enter the fashion industry from a non-art school such as University of Michigan?
Okay. Actually, I was accepted to the University of Michigan. I almost came here. Yeah. My father came to University of Michigan, and my brother Bobby was at University of Michigan. And so it was something that I wanted to do, but I had this dream of being a designer, and I knew that I had to go to Parsons. But especially during the hard times, I always regretted that I missed campus life, that I missed kind of the normalcy of living on a campus and experiencing that, because being thrown into New York City when you're 18 years old, it's kind of scary and it's kind of exciting, and it was in the 70s, so it was kind of wild too. As far as biology and chemistry, I mean, I don't really know anything about that, so I guess that tells you how much it means, but I'm sure that in textile development, chemistry is very important, but it's not anything that I'm able to speak about.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And this side?
Hi, my name's Brianna Phillips. I'm actually a student at College for Creative Studies, if you've ever heard of it. It's in Detroit, Michigan. I'm from Detroit, so. So you've been supported by a lot of models and designers and have a lot of recognition from people who make moves in the fashion industry. What is important when it comes to making connections, especially when those people can have an impact on your career? And would you say that it's about who you know and not what you know? And why didn't you choose to work for a major fashion retailer? Like, you had you're a student from Parsons. Why didn't you choose to work for Calvin Klein or Ralph Lauren?
That's a good question. Well, the reason why I never worked for a big designer is because I had this idea about affordable clothing, and I loved what at the beginning of my career was called junior sportswear, but then it really became the contemporary market. So I was really a pioneer of the contemporary market, where the clothing was affordable, but it had a little more style, a little more sophistication to it. And if you go to a department store, you can see like how stores are structured. There's that junior department where I started out, but then contemporary is a little bit more sophisticated, but it's not the designer department. And it was always my dream to do those kind of clothes. The first question was about networking and friends. I think it's very important. I mean, you see that
so many people that I met were through my friend Stephen Meisel. I mean, that's how I met Naomi and Linda and Christy. They were coming over to my house, and we were just hanging out way before I did fashion shows. So I knew them, and they're the ones who helped me get all the other models. And Marc Jacobs, I knew just from, because he was interested in fashion, and then we actually worked together. So I think that that's important in any industry that you join. It's like you need to network, you need to know people, because you never know when you're going to be out of work or you need a helping hand somewhere. And if there's somebody there that's your friend, I mean, you know, that's what friends are for. So.
Thank you. And from this side?
Hi, my name is Aditi, and I was wondering, what's the best advice you've received about surviving in this cutthroat industry, and who gave you this advice?
Okay, so everyone thinks it's a cutthroat industry. That's your first obstacle. You can't think that way. You have to think about your dream and what you want to do, and you have to do everything possible to make that happen. And that's kind of what I did. I was at school and I heard about a job and I jumped on it. Nobody would have done that, but I don't know, I had the chutzpah to like run up there with this student portfolio, and I got the job. And at that point, there were so many more designers. There was so many more companies to work for. I mean, now it's gotten down to a handful in the United States. So I think that, you know, the competition is even harder and harder now, but you have to shine through. You have to figure out your way, and you have to really, really come up with your own identity. Because you notice that every designer has his own look. I'm talking about designers, not like people that do more commercial things, but designers. And that's what you have to make it. And along with, as I think you can hear in what I say about myself, that determination, that focus. But you're also sacrificing a lot. You know, I'm not married, I don't have a family. I mean, my brothers have kids, and I kind of lived through that, but I was always so dedicated to my work that, you know, I was always worried about the next collection. So I think it's a trade-off, like what is it that you want in your life? And I think that that's what's important is, and that's what I mean when you have to stay true to yourself. Because you have to give up certain things to get certain things.
Thank you.
Thank you, that was a great answer.
Hi, my name is Maddie, and my question is, what advice or tips do you have for someone who wants to get into the industry but isn't sure where to start?
Okay. I think you have to go to a great design school. And to me, Parsons, Central St. Martin's, and then there's the design school in Antwerp right now that produced all the, what they call the Antwerp Six, Dries van Noten, Anne de Mulmeister. I think those are the happening places that you have to be, if that's the level of design you want to do. But there's many levels of design. I mean, you could go work for a textile company, or you could go design lingerie or bridal. I mean, it depends what it is that you want and how hard you want to work. I mean, I work 7 days a week most of the time. So is that what you want to do, or do you want to have, you know, nice weekends? You know, it really depends on what you want.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello, my name is Cherub Thomas. My question is, your clothing is sold all over the world, whether it's in your own stores or in department stores, but do you see yourself opening an Anna Sui store here in Michigan, because there isn't one?
From time to time, you can find it at Anthropology, and we're trying to sell it to Hudson Bay, yeah, but it just depends on the season. I think that having just one store is really enough. I tried having a store in Los Angeles twice, but it just never happened. I think it was too far a distance. I couldn't really control what was going on there. So I think unless I had a bigger machine behind me, I don't think I could have a store outside of the one that I have in New York.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm from the College from Creative Studies as well, and I study illustration. I'm a huge fan of your cosmetic line, particularly
Thank
the
you.
packaging. Do you design it yourself personally? You said that it was licensed, so
Yeah.
in my imagination land, you choose all the colors yourself. And
Okay, a license means you have final approval. So I work with teams, and the teams constantly change. And my favorite was the original team when we first developed the products. And everything goes through me, from the box to the container to the actual product. Like I try everything myself. But it's my collection, but I don't physically, mix the chemicals. So that's really how like a lot of things are done now. It's not that you're actually making the formulas. Same with fragrance, it's the same thing. Because it's an industry that I don't really know how to make it, but I can give my ideas to them and my suggestions and my kind of like what I'm trying to evoke, because it's all about the image that you're trying to create and the fantasy that you're trying to create. So all of that is me, that they're drawing from, is from my world, from what I've done, from my boutique. Like that's where it becomes my product.
how do you feel about the declining sales in fragrances?
Well, I don't know exactly what you mean, because fragrances, I think, are bigger than ever. It's just all changing, like everything else. Like what's successful is changing. But then still, #1 is Chanel #5. So no one can beat that one.
Anna, I have a question. What's your favorite fragrance that you've made?
It's funny, for many, many years I wore Secret Wish. Even when there was a newer fragrance, as soon as I used up the first bottle, I would go back to Secret Wish. But recently I've been wearing La Nuit de Bohème. It's a little stronger, a little more sophisticated, and I just love it. But it's not the most successful fragrance, whereas Secret Wish has been our most successful.
Okay, great, thank you. Over here, hi.
Hi, Anna.
Hi.
My name's Shinri. So I know you're from Bloomfield Hills, and I'm from Troy, so I just thought that was pretty cool. But first of all, thank you so much for being here. My heart is beating really fast right now. I just can't believe I'm talking to you.
Thank you.
No problem. So my question, I'm kind of like gonna segue away a little bit. And my question was, what do you indulge in? Like, what's your guilty pleasure? Be it
fashion.
Of course, outside of fashion. Like,
well,
so
I mean,
TV.
to me, there's nothing outside of fashion. I'm obsessed. I mean, like in the morning, the first thing I do is I read women's wear and I look at Net-a-Porter. What can I buy and what can I wear? And it's like, I don't know, that's just how my brain works. And what am I thinking about when I'm not thinking about my job? Oh, I love that Dries Van Noten jacket. Oh, I love those Miu Miu shoes. I mean, it's just my brain. I'm very shallow that way, so.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over here. Hi.
Hi. My name's Jordan. And firstly, I'd like to say this is a really humbling experience. But my question is to you. Some time ago, Mary Ellen Mark came and she spoke and she said something that really resonated with me. And it seems like something, I guess I wanted to ask you if it's something you embody as well, is this idea that she would shoot with film and shoot in black and white because that's the way that she saw the world.
Mm-hmm.
So is the way that you design clothes, does it sort of transcend that, and that's the way that you see?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think that's the artistic part of it, is that no matter how hard I try, no matter what the trend is, it's always kind of the same thing.
Right, it's you.
I mean, like, I can't do minimal. I can't do tailored. I mean, it's just not my thing. So even when I try it, it's not successful. But I can do like a beautiful dress that's trimmed with lace or embroidery, or which is what I love. And I think that you can see it in the product when somebody loves it, or the final piece of art.
Right.
You can see it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over here. Hi.
Hi, Anna. My name is Meng Xiao. I come from China.
Hi.
So the first time I saw I know Anna Sui is, after I graduated from high school, I saw a bottle of a fragrance in the window. So I just wondering, how for many years past, I haven't seen your style being changed a lot. I'm just wondering, I know many brands are designed nowadays for, to satisfy their customers' needs. Have you been struggled with, satisfy your customer and what you really want to design? How do you decide to preserve your style?
Yeah, I think that, that's such a good question, because that's the hardest thing for a designer, is how do they keep relevant? How do they stay in the picture? How do you make something that people still want, especially if they've had a lot of it? And that's the big challenge right now, is how do I develop new products to do that? So really the way is through even more innovation, even more changing. So I think if you look at, especially my cosmetics, you can see that very, very clearly, that we've moved away from a lot of the original packaging, and there's lots of fun different things, and they're maybe even limited edition, but it's always changing so that you're not gonna have that product always available. So that's kind of the challenge, is like you have to buy it when it comes out, or it's not gonna be there next season. And also the innovation with the actual product itself. There's so many things that have improved, like the base makeup has improved, like BB cream is like the new thing. And so many powders that we have one powder that's cool when you put it on, so it's great to wear it in the summer. So these are all new innovations. So I think it's a combination of those two things.
All right, we've got about less than 5 minutes left, so.
Hi. I'm Lisa. You touched upon the tipping point, and what do you think your part is in the Hush Puppy boom? I'm curious.
Well, I don't think I'm necessarily that important in that world, but because I think Hush Puppies has come a long way from that product. But I remember growing up and seeing Hush Puppy ads every month in 17 magazine and thinking like they were such cool shoes. And then it went through a period of nerdy shoes. And then when nerdy became fashionable, that's when I thought, oh, they would be fun to do lavender nerdy shoes. And that's when I used them in that collection. I think it was 1994. Now I think that they're a huge conglomerate, and they're owned by Wolverine, which owns a lot of other brands. And so they have a lot more money and power and structure behind them. So they're able to be much more innovative. So that's why I'm able to work with them again. I don't have to just do that Hush Puppy shoe. I didn't point them out in the show, but some of them, some of the print ones, and my favorite were the ones with the palm trees painted on them. And I mean, they did such beautiful shoes for us, and anything that we asked for, they did. So I think that that's kind of incredible that a very commercial company like that is able to be that flexible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over here.
Hi, and I'm sorry, I'm really tall and this mic is kind of low. I'm Triana. I just wanted to know, would you ever be open to doing any type of mentorship program, or do you ever see yourself reaching back and trying to learn, teach anyone the things that you've learned at Parsons or throughout your career?
We actually have interns in our office, and we have different intern programs where you can work either in design, production, or in sales. And I think that we wouldn't be able to survive without interns. And some of them spend maybe a few weeks with us, but then we've also had interns that have been with us for a whole semester. And actually some European interns have been with us for maybe a whole year. And I think that's the most value that you get. The longer you stay at a company, the more you understand how the structure is and the more you're going to learn. So I think that that's like a terrific way to learn. And that's the real thing. It's not making up an assignment. That's the real thing.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
It's really good advice.
Hi, my name's Carrie. I think that fashion can be really empowering for women and a mode of creative expression, but sometimes the marketing is really damaging. And I was wondering if you think that fashion has a responsibility to promote women's health and well-being.
Of course, to be politically correct, I have to say yes.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name. Hello? Yeah. Hi, my name is Young Ha. I'm an architecture student in Michigan. And First of all, I made a model to get a signature from you later.
Oh, wow.
This is what we do, make models all the time. Well, I was just wondering if you were an architecture student, because architecture and design has a lot of similarities and differences. How would you plan your life, like not just like getting hired and getting a job, but like long term? Like how would you plan your life as a different like job, or like designing something else?
Well, I don't think I could be an architect because I don't think I could do the math. Not that good at math. I never thought about it. I mean, the only other thing that I kind of have a passion for is interior design,
Right.
but that's almost like making a collection. Like you pick out the fabric, you pick out the shape, and but I don't think I could do a building. I don't really understand that, and that's not how my brain works. But I do appreciate architecture, and I really admire people that can do it, but I don't think I'd do a good job.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so this is going to be our last question.
Hi, I'm Carly Francis, and I'm interested in cosmetic design and its packaging. And I was just wondering if your process of creating new cosmetics is similar to your fashion lines. I know you started out with like a mood board. Is that the same deal?
Oh yeah, definitely. I work with a team in Japan, and actually that's how it starts. They send a mood board of what they want to present as the idea for the next season, and there's always a theme and always kind of like a catchphrase. I think the new one that we're working on is much more drawing upon like the fairy tale fantasy style that I incorporate in my design, and so we're trying to capture like what does that mean? Like it means like a certain thing to a certain person when they see it, and is it going to be magical looking? And so we're looking at different materials, different shapes of containers, and then also different ingredients. So it's exactly how you do a collection. There's a mood board, and then they start making molds and different products, and you're trying them, and sometimes they'll say, oh no, it's too sticky, this cream is too sticky, and then they have to change it. And other times they'll say, but this is what's selling, and then sometimes you have to agree with them, So it's a matter of compromise a lot, but it's still, everything goes through me and my office, and so we're able to squash something if we really don't like it.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you once again, Anna, for being here with us.
Thank you.
This was really inspiring and
thanks.
really special for me as well.
Thank you. Well,
So-
thanks for being such a great moderator.
Thank you.
Great questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.